Hi, my name is Jared Mello, and today we have an episode of Everything Eccentric. And as you can see, I have a guest next to me. His name is Joseph Mitsch, and he is what is it again?
Well, technically I am a counselor intern. My actual title is Director of Communications at Kingsway Recovery in Mullica Hill.
Okay,
That's a really spiffy title, though. That doesn't really mean too much.
So back to one more thing here, and if you're new and you're a part of maybe Joe's audience and you like videos about mental health, psychology, self-improvement, or relationships, please give me a subscribe if you're into that kind of thing before we get into the rest of the conversation here. Also, I have a book coming out called Radical Self-Respect. I'm recording the audio book on Tuesday, and I'm probably going to get it to all of the major platforms, whether it's Amazon and Kindle, I guess, for audiobook.
Yeah, I'm going to need a copy of that one.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm super excited to get that out. But now, on to the conversation here with Joe.
Okay.
So remember, this is take 2 of this.
Yes.
Maybe even take 3 because we had another debacle 2 hours ago. But we're here. We're here.
Murphy's Law.
So I'm always curious with people who are in the addiction field, like, what is your stance? Like, what do you stand for right now?
Well, I still, let me clarify before I say anything. It's still an individual process. It's still an individual journey. For me personally, it's complete and total abstinence from any mind-altering substance. I believe addiction and substance abuse are separate. I believe there's a cause to addiction, and substance abuse fills that void. So I think that needs to be worked on. It's a loaded question. The short answer is total abstinence, getting your life back.
Okay.
So.
And the reason I ask that question is because I see so many different stances that people have. I see some people are completely anti-drug. I see some people are just you have to be AA or NA. I see all sorts of versions, so I'm always curious what someone is for. I see a lot of complaining on Facebook in particular, complaining about the laws, complaining about insurance policies, and
really advocates on social media arguing. That's crazy. No, that seems to be that's the main problem. It truly is. We can't get on the same page. Everyone's opinion is right. Everyone else's opinion is wrong. It's hard out there, especially like we always say, like the newcomer's the most important person, and I believe that to a degree, I really do. But when the newcomer's sitting there and they're watching, two advocates or experts, no such thing as an expert in the field, by the way, two advocates arguing about which way is right and which way is wrong. I mean, it's very disheartening to the newcomer to sit there and be like, oh my God, like I'm just trying to find my place and I don't know which way to go now. So
you said no experts in the field. That'll probably ruffle a couple feathers out there.
I'm an expert in my own recovery.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's really, I'm an expert in my own life because I lived it. I can't tell you what to do in your life. You can ask me advice, I can ask you advice, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to make our own decision. And that's something that's lost. We're putting all our faith into, a program or an individual's thought process because we're afraid to stand on our own 2 feet and make a decision. Like it's ass backwards, to be honest with you. Like we should be teaching like confidence building and like self-healing and self-esteem instead of, how do I do this? What do I do? Tell me. Like it's not promoting confidence. It's a big problem out there.
One thing I agree with, because I want to get into like just a little bit of your story for a second too, to how you wound up to where you are today. But part of my story was being a part of NA for a little while. Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly, and it's because of NA I found this avenue, but there was a woman that went there that she invited us all to some network marketing thing. And I joined it briefly. And then we went to this How to Talk to Yourself seminar, it was called. And that was one of those life-changing moments for me.
Okay.
Just the power of positive self-talk, how you talk to yourself, mm-hmm. the power of changing your neural pathways by what you're saying and what you're seeing and what you're reading. Mm-hmm. And it was a definite turn for me that I never got that in NA. And it's like, NA was great to help me get clean, but in order to like really build that belief in myself, that was definitely something that I didn't get there. I got elsewhere.
I think There's no way to. I think the fellowships are a great foundation. I really do. I think, when you leave treatment or you're looking for something in early recovery, I think any fellowship is absolutely essential, because you walk into a room and everybody understands. Like, I always tell this joke when I give my lectures. It's like they say to go to a meeting when you leave treatment. So you go to a meeting, what happens? You raise your hand, you say, hey, I just got out of rehab, what happens? Everybody claps. Go to Wawa and say, excuse me, everybody, I just got out of treatment, or I just got out of rehab. See how fast they call the cops on you, because you're just not surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So I think that comfort level is important early on, but that comfort level needs to get to a point of self-confidence. Because if I'm sorry, if I'm thinking the same thing I thought 5 years ago, I have a problem, because I'm not growing, I'm not evolving. If I'm going in there every day with the exact same mindset, that's a big problem to me. And that unfortunately, that's a big problem I see in the rooms today.
Yeah, I do agree, because there's certainly some self-defeating beliefs. I think they keep on compounding into their heads.
Oh, I agree.
And that they tell them not to trust their decision-making, because you don't know what's going to be diseased or not. And you got to be reliant on the other people to
Right.
approve your thoughts, just to make sure it's not going to be a diseased thought. So to me, it's a little too disempowering. But I have no problems with people going. I think it's, like you said, I think it's a great foundation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And if they listen to what they're told and they do what they're suggested to do, they will get clean. I'll say that much about it. That does happen.
Absolutely, but they still have to believe they can do it. They still have to believe they can do it. And that's, have you ever heard the saying, I'm sure you have, if you want to go to a meeting. A meeting will save your life. A meeting will stop you from using it. Of course. My whole stance on that is the meeting will not save your life. Okay? Give yourself the credit that you deserve. If you get to the stop sign, okay, at the end of the street, and you can make a right to go to a meeting, or you can make a left to go to the bar, or make a left to go cop, or make a left to go to Atlantic City, and you make that right, if you choose to go to that meeting had nothing to do with you saving your life. You making the decision to go to that meeting is what saved your life. That meeting is a tool. Those people in the room are support, but give yourself the credit you deserve. Okay? And that's the problem. We give our credit to everybody else, and we don't appreciate our own decision. I decided to go to that meeting. That is a confident building tool that I just gave myself. And that's what we need to do. We need to promote self-confidence in this world.
So, to play devil's advocate,
Yes.
I know what they would say to that. They would say,
Oh, so do I.
the arrogance or the too much confidence is going to be a red flag indicator. When you think you got it, that's when you've had it.
Sure.
I know what they say. It's still in there.
I have the book memorized myself.
I've just turned it off.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
don't think it served me
Absolutely.
anymore. But before we get too far along in this, I wanted to get into, you can give yourself a little background of how you got to Kingsway Recovery.
How we got to Kingsway?
Yeah.
Well, to tell that story, we got to dive into my actual addiction a little bit. I started using anabolic steroids years and years and years ago, and that was to play baseball. Believe it or not, I took them because I wanted to get faster. That was my whole reason for taking them. I didn't want to be big and strong. I just wanted to be faster. And I started getting hurt. I started, blew out my knee. And then I had ankle surgery, so they moved me from outfield to third base. And then I blew out my shoulder, and then they moved me to first base. So as my injuries evolved or progressed, if you will, on my time on the DL, I was in the gym, and I just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I realized, hey, you know what, I'm pretty strong. I didn't realize, I could lift the weight that I was lifting. So I started taking a lot of steroids, and you start getting hurt. You start tweaking muscles, pinching nerves or whatnot. And I remember I hurt my neck, or I hurt my pec in the gym. I did like a little pec tear. And like nothing, a guy I was working out with was like, oh, just bump a line and you'll be fine. And I was like, oh.
Percocet or something?
No,
cocaine?
Cocaine, straight off. And at that point, I didn't
It's an
drink.
odd usage of it, but...
Well, yes and no. Apparently, it's just very prevalent. I didn't know that at the time. So when I first started using cocaine, I used it as a painkiller. I did not use cocaine to get high. And then what happened was, obviously, my pec got better, and I was still doing it. And I was like, you know what?
You didn't like cocaine, you just liked the smell.
Right, I just like the smell of it. But that's how it started for me, really. And then from cocaine, I just developed the pill habit. The pill habit lasted years and years and years. And then, I started to experiment with other things. And, tell a joke like I used heroin once for like 8 years.
Yeah.
It was probably closer to 6 now that I think about it. But from there, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. I already had a nice little dry goods habit, if you will. And then I started drinking a little bit of alcohol. And alcohol was always very taboo for me, believe it or not. Drugs were okay, but alcohol was bad because I considered myself an athlete. So I didn't want to put alcohol in my body. And when mom got sick, like really sick, and I had her for 23 hours a day, except for when the nurse came in, and I wasn't sleeping. So I started, all I knew about alcohol, believe it or not, I knew Jack Daniels and I knew Budweiser, and I did not drink beer at all. I just didn't drink beer. So I bought some Jack Daniels, and and honest to God, my thought process was I was just going to sip it just to relax myself at night because I wasn't sleeping. Mom had this cowbell that we got her, so every time she needed something, she couldn't really yell because she was very weak. So she'd ring this bell, and I'd have to run upstairs, and I'd take care of her. And this happened all night long. So my thought process was, I'm just going to sip this at night and relax. All right. Well, that sipping turned into, well, let me just do a shot, then I'll sip. Let me just do 2 shots, then I'll sip. And it turned into real quick me buying a gallon of Jack Daniels. And I actually remember the day Mom died. Mom died around 9:30 in the morning. I went to the gym about an hour after that because I thought I just needed I needed to get my mind right. I left the gym and I walked to the liquor store. And that pretty much started, I was drinking a gallon of Jack Daniels a day for like the next 4 months.
Rough on the old liver.
On top of the drug habit that I continued to have. So that's when my life, like I hate to say that's when my life became unmanageable because I was pretty messed up prior to, but I think the drug and alcohol combination is what put me over the edge totally.
I'll tell you what, I was tempted to throw a Christopher Walken cowbell joke in there somewhere. Need more cowbell.
But from there, I checked myself in. I mean, I lost everything too. I lost friends. There's nothing worse than going to court and having the judge tell you that you're an unfit father. That having your parenting rights suspended, that hurt. Losing friends, losing family to this day. I still have family members that don't speak to me.
So what got you into the rooms initially?
Well, I went to rehab. I checked myself in January 2013, January 19, 2013, and that's when I learned all about this whole recovery thing. And they say do 90 and 90, and because I was such an extremist and I had to be the absolute best in recovery, I did 237 meetings in my first 90 days. And then, I don't know.
You got upset. You shaded that addiction for the meetings addiction.
And that's exactly what happened. That's when I realized that I needed balance in my life. And I did not get clean to be a meeting guy. I got clean to be a father.
Let me ask you this. Did you become like a super judgmental person while in the rooms? Because I know, like I did. I've become like a, what do they call them? NA Nazi, I guess so to speak. I wasn't able to see things clearly. I just saw things as you're either one of us or you're one of those other people that are not like me. And I was just really hard on others and myself.
Yeah, I was very judgmental. That's a good word for it. I was what do they call it? A big book thumper.
Yeah, that's what they would call it.
That's what they called me. I went to both NA and AA. I chose AA overall, to be honest with you, just because I didn't really like being touched. The whole, people laugh when I say it, but it's true. Like I have a problem, and that stems from my childhood. Which we can talk about later, but I don't like being touched, and that was just my thing. So I gravitated towards AA. It was more my speed.
Right. And then what made you eventually decide to leave the rooms? Like, because you were there for 4 years or so, you said?
I was there for less than that. Less than that. Probably about 2.5 years.
Okay.
2 years, 2.5 years. I haven't been to a meeting in about 4.5 years.
Okay.
What happened? A lot happened. I was blessed with the sponsor that I had, and I say that because he wasn't the best sponsor, meaning I didn't have a great sponsor experience, but I believe now that helped me. I saw a lot of people, for example, I tell this story, it just opened my eyes. I got to a meeting late, I was working, so I had to show up late, and I saw this woman on the side of the building, she was like spritzing herself, and I watched her pouring vodka into an iced tea bottle. And I was like, okay, that's why you're here. You're here for help. I get it. But then the same woman in the meeting, while she's sipping the iced tea, raised her hand and said, I have 2 years clean. And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. Like, there's no accountability here. And then I started seeing things and people, sponsors sleeping with sponsees' wives and vice versa. And I saw it as a human factor. I call it the human element. And I was like, you know what? Just because we're in the same room doesn't mean we're all here for the same thing. And that's when I really started thinking for myself. So
That's a big point. I want to flag that there, the thinking for yourself thing, because that's what I began to do too.
Mm-hmm.
I began to realize that just because the book says it doesn't mean it's necessarily true for me. And there's some distinguishing points there where I decided, like, you know what, this is not going to be my story. That, like they'd always say, if you go drink a beer or something, you're just going to matter of time before you go do heroin or your drug of choice. And I decided, no, that's not me.
And you have that right to make that decision, and that's what I realized. I started thinking for myself, and I was a very confident person. I was an athlete. I was cocky. I was confident. I was cocky. I had a chip on my shoulder, and when I got into the rooms, it was like, well, you have to be this new person. Like, you need to change everything about yourself, and here's your halo, and here's your angel wings, and I was like, whoa, like, this is not who I am. Why can't I get clean? How does Joe get clean? Why do I have to be somebody different? And that's when I just started changing my whole perspective. That's when I started to trust myself again. That's when I was able to look in the mirror and say, Joe, you're not sick. You know why? Because you don't want to be sick anymore. And Joe, you can do this on your own because you choose to. Like, one of my biggest problems is, and again, I'm not knocking the rooms, all right? I'm just giving my experiences here. One of the things they say, I'm sure you've heard this as well, you have to give your will away to get clean. Right. I adamantly disagree with that. I gave my will away when I was using. I had to take my will back to get clean. I had to believe in my heart that I could do it, and that's exactly what I did.
I think it's really important to have your story come out too, because when people are in the rooms, they only hear a certain perspective. They don't hear about the person that maybe leaves and does well, but that's part of your story, right? And they only see the people that come back and say, this is the only way, thank goodness for this. But I think right now there's tons of different ways people are going about doing it. And we're going to go into a couple other avenues right now, such as like Matt, for example. I think that's a big, a lot of controversy over Matt right now, where I see some people NA say, oh, certainly not clean, so you're not doing well.
That pisses me off. I can tell you, I will tell you straight up, if an individual is putting forth their best effort and they're on an MAT program, for them to go into the rooms and be proud of their accomplishment for not using, and then for somebody in that room to say, well, you're not clean, that is one of my biggest problems with the room, how people can judge and take that away from an individual who's putting forth their... You know how many people in treatment that I deal with who are like, I picked up again because I was told I wasn't clean? Like, at some point, keep your opinion to yourself and think about what's best for the individual. It truly makes me sick when people feel they have the right to tell people what they're doing is right or wrong.
You know why they're doing it though, right?
I know why
they're doing it because I think it makes them feel better. Oh, I got this over you, and as long as you still have that, they're going to feel like I'm better than them.
Yeah, well,
that's really what it is.
That's a great mindset to have in the room, isn't it? Like, that to me
that's what happens, though.
That is the biggest... don't even...
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Right? I believe that whatever makes people the happiest, healthiest version of themselves,
absolutely,
I'm for. Like I've mentioned before on other videos, how I like Kratom, for example. That helps me. Mm-hmm. And like it just got to the point where I don't care what people think about these things anymore.
Nor should you.
Right.
That's the thing. Nor should you. We don't get clean to make other people happy. We don't live our life to make other... Look, I like you. Like, we're cool with each other. I don't need your approval to live my life, right. And vice versa. We can have a discussion and be two individuals. I'm not sitting here trying to impress you. I know you're not sitting here trying to impress me, but I think that mentality is what's screwing everybody up. It's like, well, I'm not comfortable with who I am, and it's epitome of people-pleasing, which is another, characteristic of this whole substance abuse and addiction thing. I'm confident and comfortable with who I am today, as you are. I think more people need to find that, but it's not being promoted. It's all about what you're doing is wrong. You need to be doing this. You can't do, you're not clean if you do this. And it's so confusing for these new guys coming in, which again are supposed to be the most important people in the room. It gets lost. It gets lost in translation.
I can see that. I mean, because there's so many different views right now. I know the people I talk to that are in the scientific field of it, they'll say things like, Matt is the evidence-based best way, and I don't even really agree with them when they say that. I think it could be a good way for some people, but just to say that that's the best way, it's like I think that's a little misguided too. It's like everyone, like you said, just needs to find what works for them, and be encouraged to find it. Right? Even if it differs a little bit from whoever is talking to them's view.
What's simply wrong? What's wrong with just saying, I got clean, okay? How did you get clean? Why not ask other people how they want to get clean? Or, talk to people about their journey instead of forcing them to do. And that's, look, how I got clean is how I got clean. I actually don't even share how I got clean. I really don't. I don't really talk about what I do on a daily basis to stay clean. It's nobody's business. I don't talk about religion. I don't talk about politics. Like, these are just, it's my personal journey. Like, I don't understand why everybody's so gung-ho about promoting their way when it's their way. It's like your favorite food, Who cares? It does. I don't have to like what you eat. But we're just under the mindset that we gotta make everybody else happy in the field of recovery. And a huge mistake is we take clean time as like, we put these people up on a pedestal who have 20 some years clean, when some of them are the biggest assholes in the room.
It certainly can be.
Can be, yes. Not all. Can be. Can be.
Well, like the thing, some people they say assholes when they're using, and then they turn into super assholes when they're clean. And so
I've seen that too.
This is the thing. I don't really care what people are clean, how you're living today.
Right.
That's really all I care.
Right.
About.
And the thing is, if you would have talked to me 5-6 years ago when I first got clean, I would have been a completely different person than I am today. And I think that's the beauty of recovery in life. Recovery has given me the ability to think for myself. It's given me the ability to have original thought. Okay, I'm evolving constantly. I like to learn things. I like to change my opinion. People call me a hypocrite all the time, but it's the fact that you could discuss something with me, and I could see it from your point of view and agree with you,
right.
And then somebody else could talk to me, okay, and I can see it from their point of view, and I can agree with them, but they may completely contradict one another. Well, that's just because I'm open-minded to the person I'm talking to. So there just needs to be, again, more confidence. They say the opposite of addiction is connection. I think the opposite of addiction is confidence.
Okay, so along the same lines, where are you on the is it a disease, not a disease thing? Because I know where I stand on that.
Wow, you really want to lose some viewers here, don't you?
Now, if the truth loses viewers, then viewers should be lost.
It's not truth. It's my opinion.
Okay.
It's my opinion. My opinion is not fact. My opinion is my opinion.
Good point.
I will hit 7 years in January, and I will never, ever refer to addiction as a disease. Okay. Now, I did when I first got clean. Before I got clean, before I went to treatment, and I think you'll agree with this, before I went to treatment, I never heard the word disease. When I went to treatment, that's when I was told that I had a disease. And you know what? It made sense. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I have an excuse for everything I've ever done. Like, it makes sense. I'm glad I have this disease. But at some point, that becomes a crutch. And I've seen, too often, people are like, well, I was clean for a year and I lost my job. So I have a disease and I picked up. Or my girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with me. Joe, I have a disease. And that's the thing. We're taught that we have this incurable disease. Okay? You hear incurable disease. What's the first thing you think about? Death. First thing I think about. So you're telling an entire generation that they have an incurable disease? What the hell do I have to get clean for then? If I'm eternally sick and I'm going to die, why even bother getting clean? And I understand. I think, honestly, the whole disease thing, I think it's more for the family members. And let me explain why, because I truly believe this. I think it's easier for a family member to accept my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my son, my daughter passed away because they have a disease,
right.
rather than just accept the fact that they couldn't get clean. And it sucks. And I get it. I'm not knocking it, but I think it's easier to digest for family members.
I mean, to me, I don't care whether it's a disease or not a disease. That's always been my stance. I don't care.
That's a much better stance to take.
I don't care what people say about it. I only care about what someone's going to do about their problem.
Yes.
And a lot of times that means refraining from drug and alcohol use to see if there's any sort of mental illnesses in there, or mood disorders, or any personality disorders in there either. Because I think right now, what happens is, I think the disease of addiction could really just be like a myriad of mental illnesses and personality disorders just lumped in there.
That is actually a condition.
Yes.
Okay? Addiction, what I said earlier, is separate than substance abuse, in my opinion. Substance abuse is a symptom of a greater picture. Of course, mental illness is a real thing. Depression, and these are real things. Addiction, okay, is a little different, okay? Substance abuse, I believe, fills the void. Something trauma-based, some sort of mental illness, okay? The addiction part, though, when we hear addiction, all we think about is drugs and alcohol, but there's so much more to addiction. We're all addicted to something, and addiction is just essentially habit-forming behavior. But when you add drugs and alcohol and sex, and you have, gambling, like for adrenaline, and you have those pleasure sensors in your head and all that dopamine, like, it fills that void, okay? That's what needs to be worked on, is the trauma. What are we looking for? All right, and look, there's no blueprint. Okay, it's different for everybody, and that's another part of the problem. Is you can't look at somebody and say this is what needs to be done, because there's too much individual trauma, too much individual pain that needs to be taken into account.
I think that is what should be addressed right now, actually.
Yes.
I don't think they're doing a good job at it, though, because they
No.
clump them all together too much in a lot of these places. And it takes a lot of work, and it's the same thing with rehabs, too. But I will say this about addiction. I do believe, like you said, everyone's addicted to something.
Oh, yeah.
The variables are how much and how frequently they use that thing.
Oh,
and,
of course.
And I also tell people, if you want to get a glimpse of being an addict, like you take just food and water away from a person for long enough, they'll start acting like the worst raving crack addict or heroin addict out there.
Absolutely.
So all of us have the capability, because we're all dependent on food and water. So I think that should be, people could use that as a little bit of understanding. Like, hey, even if I lost, like look at things like the starvations of, like during the Holocaust, for example. Like, yeah, they're acting like junkies just for food. So we all have it in us to be acting crazy like that.
Well, look at how many people in the morning, people, it's funny because I'll see people, they'll trash addicts and they'll trash this whole substance abuse thing, but they can't get through the day without their first cup of coffee or their first cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
Because God forbid they don't
I
have
need
it.
my caffeine.
Right. So do I. God forbid they don't have it, they act like a raving lunatic, but that's addiction. It's a habit-forming behavior, because our mind tells us that we can't perform our daily task unless this is done. I can't go to work unless I have 2 cigarettes. I can't start my day unless I have my cup of coffee. That's addiction. You can live your normal life without having that cup of coffee and without having that cigarette, but our mind tells us we need that. Okay? Try taking a shower. Okay? Think about when you take a shower. When you get in the shower, you do the same thing. If you had a camera on you, okay, you would do the same thing every time you got in the shower. It's repetitive. You start boom, 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 because we're taught that's it, and we get familiar with it. That's addiction. Okay, it truly is. We're addicted to that pattern, to that routine. We're all addicted to something.
I guess for me, it's just gotten to a point where I just accept all of it about myself.
Yeah,
I drink
absolutely.
caffeine every day. I accept it, and I just don't beat myself up about it anymore.
No.
I think a lot of the issues become just from our lack of acceptance or wanting other people's approval of what we're doing. But when I stopped needing that, and I just said, you know what? I just feel good when I drink caffeine, so I'm not going to care what happens with that. Same thing with my other supplements that I take, or Kratom. It's like, I don't care. I've been through both. I've been completely clean, even from things like caffeine and nicotine too, for years, and I just wasn't feeling as good, so I just owned what made me happiest and healthiest for me. And that's all I can ever say to anyone is, hey, whatever's going to work for you. But you got to find out what works for you.
You got to find out what's working for you. And I tell people that all the time. Like, everybody's like, oh, you bash the rooms. I don't bash the rooms at all. Okay? I probably wouldn't be here without AA today, because AA set my foundation.
I think the awareness they give is good.
Absolutely.
The steps and writing them out and whatever.
Absolutely. But people will come up to me to this day and they'll be like, yeah, 12 steps aren't for me. And my first question to everybody, regardless of the fellowship, is, have you done them? Well, no, I just know they're not for me. No, that doesn't work. Do them, give it 110%, come back to me in a year, then tell me they don't work for you.
Yeah.
But my favorite quote, my favorite saying is, whether you think you can or you can't, you're 100% right.
Henry Ford.
Yes, absolutely. See that? And the thing with that is, if you don't believe you can do something, you can have all the support in the world. You can have everybody saying, you got this, you can do this. If you can't envision yourself doing it and you don't believe you can do it, you're not going to do it. And the flip side is, if the whole world's against you and they're like, there's absolutely no way you'll ever do it, but in your heart you know you can, you have that confidence to say, yeah, watch me. Yeah. But that gets lost in this whole addiction thing. We don't believe we can, and we can't love We can't love the addict. We can't love the person who's dealing with substance abuse enough to get them clean. They have to believe it. And that's why, again, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, we have to start preaching more confidence.
Well, I agree with that because in my radical self-respect program, the two things that need to be worked on first before I can even get to mindset with them is what? Mental health and addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And usually an addiction has to be covered first because you can't even really determine if there is a mental illness or not until the drugs are gone.
Absolutely.
Because the symptoms mimic mental illness.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
But then once that happens, boom, building the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It should be number one. And how do we do that? I tell people you can do it via affirmations, writing things down 15 times a day, things you want to cultivate, surround yourself with positive, healthy people that raise your vibration, raise your energy, and remove toxic people and remove toxic things from your life.
Absolutely.
And if people don't do that, it gets in the way of the whole rest of my system, and it circles back. And just like mental health and addiction will get in the way of the whole rest of the process too, if they don't take care of that first.
Right, you're exactly right. I'm big on vision boards. I like vision boards and checklists. I do that every day.
They work.
They do work.
Seeing things, writing them, seeing them, there's such a huge impact with that.
I actually talk to myself in the mirror too. I'm a big believer in speaking out loud. Everybody's like, yeah, I think it. To me, there's a power of writing something down or giving it to the universe and speaking it out loud. That's just what's helped me.
So one thing I wanted to get into as well is, of all the things the addiction advocates and the people who are trying to help others are trying to do right now, what would you like them to be doing differently? Or what do you think is something you would change about how it's going right now? If you could change anything.
I'd like us all to get on the same page. I really would.
What do you think prevents people from getting on the same page?
Ego, attitude, too many, and I see it all the time. There's people who actually want to discredit other people to make themselves look better, and there's no point to that. Like it's.
But here's the thing about that: you never see that. You never see anyone saying, "Yep, I'm that person they're talking about that is fighting everyone else."
Whoever's going to watch this, who I am talking about, they're going to agree with me 100% because they're not.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, they're not.
No one's going to be the one to say, "Oh, yeah, that's actually me.
Well,
I'm the person doing that."
I can name people if you want. I would never do that.
But no one does. I never see it. All I see is people complaining about someone else, or people complaining about legislature, or people complaining about insurance policies or whatever.
And that's why it's never going to change, unfortunately. Like it's only getting worse. It's not getting any better. It's like we're just throwing things at walls and seeing what sticks. And I understand and I appreciate the effort. I really do. And I don't think anybody is out to hurt anybody. I truly don't. But I just think people don't realize the damage in a lot of what they're saying. I think
I've just gotten a little callous towards the whole thing, honestly, because to me, you just can't help anyone that doesn't want to help themselves. And I think a lot of the people who are in the field, they forget that one thing. And they're helping themselves by trying to help others more than the people who are on the receiving end of the help, I think.
I think a lot of people, that's true. I do believe a lot of people in the field think that they're helping. And I really believe that. Like, look, I work in treatment, all right? And the truth is, I work in treatment, but I don't necessarily believe in treatment. Like, if you ever sat through one of my lectures, or one of my groups, like I'm talking to you now, it's all about self-confidence and believing in yourself. Like, I rarely talk about addiction at all. I'll play motivational videos. Okay, the motivational videos I play have nothing to do with addiction. And then when the video's over, I ask everybody, like, who can relate to this? Every hand goes up because everybody wants to better their life. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. What did he say about drugs and alcohol? Nothing. Wow, that's crazy. Yet we can all relate to that. It's all about self-improvement. It's about being better than you were yesterday. And if you used drugs yesterday and you don't want to use drugs today, then you've taken the first step. I don't even refer to myself as an addict anymore. And I get a lot of heat for that. I will not refer to myself as an addict or an alcoholic. Am I in recovery? Absolutely. But at what point do I get to forgive myself for the past? We all used to wet our beds when we were kids. Did I introduce myself? Hey, I'm Joe, I'm a bedwetter? No, at what point do we put our past behind us? All right? And I just think that if we constantly, whether you're in the rooms or not, if you constantly say, hi, Joe, I'm an addict, hi, Joe, I'm an alcoholic, then we're constantly remembering who we were. How can we move on from who we were if we're constantly identifying ourselves by that?
Two things it makes me think of. So one, I agree with you.
Okay.
I think the best thing about treatment, I agree with you. The best thing about treatment is it just gets someone away from the drugs and their scenario for 30, 60, 90 days or whatever it is. But there is certainly no cure in that treatment. There is no even halfway guarantee that anything's even going to improve, because it always just comes down back to the individual. What are they going to do differently when they get out?
Exactly.
That's all it ever comes down to. And I think that's also for family members too, and spouses. Oh, thank God they're going to rehab. The things will be different when they get out.
That breaks my heart.
But it's really just a roll of the dice.
Of course.
Whether they get better or not.
Of course. And again, like I said, you can't love somebody enough to get them clean. And that's why it breaks my heart. Every time I go on Facebook or social media, I see a family member posting, so-and-so relapsed, I need to get them into treatment. It just kills me.
They gotta want it themselves.
They gotta want it themselves. They have to want it themselves.
And maybe they do, but I think in a lot of cases, the other person's trying harder than that person's trying themselves.
I think that's true in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the reason why they say that they're always an addict is because some people really can't just like go have a beer, or really can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like if they tell that person that you're not always going to be an addict, then that person's going to go back and do something. So look, I understand why they're doing what they do, but how do you help that person?
I'd like to sit down and listen to them and talk to them, because again, that's an individual thing. Like, I choose to be 100% abstinent from all drugs and alcohol. Do I think I could go have a beer today? Yeah, my mind tells me I could, absolutely. Do I choose to do that? No, absolutely not. It's being able to choose for yourself. And I just feel that, again, we talked about it earlier, too many times we do it for the wrong reasons, meaning we do it for somebody else. I'm going to go to rehab because my mom wants me to. I'm going to go to rehab so I have a place to live. I'm going to go to rehab because my husband or wife want me to. You got to find it within yourself to do.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And I think, like, even if I have kids one day, and before we talk about anything else, we talk about that Sesame Street addiction thing too.
Oh, yes.
My philosophy on it is, once kids get to a certain age, they're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you treat them as if they're going to do the right things, oftentimes they'll rise to meet that expectation, as opposed to trying to control them as if the kid had his own free will, they would do something wrong. And there's a difference. There's a difference between controlling and boundaries. Controlling is when you try to get people outside of yourself to do what you want them to fix yourself internally. Whereas boundaries are, hey, I'm laying down what my boundary is. You can do what you like with it, but I'm divorcing myself from the outcome, and the boundary is going to be enforced.
Well, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and let me tell you this story. I actually told this to her, and I share this with people, and people look at me like, oh my God, how could you say this to your 12-year-old daughter? My 12-year-old daughter knows more about addiction, knows more about substance abuse than most adults that I come in contact with, and that's the absolute truth. And I think a lot of it has to do with my daughter's innocence and her ability at that age to be able to think for herself. I told her, I said, listen, she's in 7th grade. I said, listen, in the next couple of years, somebody's going to offer you a drink. No, I'm not going to. I said, yes, you are. I said, it depending on what you drink and how much you drink, you're probably going to like it. And she's like, okay. I said, but you got to tell me. Okay, I went through the whole don't get in cars.
That's important.
Don't get in cars with anybody.
Honest thing open is key.
Right. Told her, I said, listen, somebody's going to hand you a joint. All right? I said, you're going to smoke it. You're going to love it. Daddy, no. I said, okay. Again, just tell me.
She might not love it.
She might not love it. I actually wasn't a weed guy at all. Then I said, listen, somebody's probably going to hand you a pill. I said, I'd rather them not, and I'd rather you not take it. I said, but if you do, I said, it's important that you tell me what you take. Okay, Daddy. And, at this point, she's getting a little nervous because it's getting to be a really talk. But I told her, and this is the part that her mouth dropped. I said, listen, but if you stick a needle in your arm, I said, you better hope that kills you before I find out about it. And she just went, and that's how I feel. There's no point in me lying to my daughter, all right? I look at it like I've done everything, so I suffer so she doesn't have to. But the truth is enough, I think, for kids. I think, I'll tell you, not that I think it's a horrible message, but, the LEAD program, which is in the schools today, it replaced the DARE program from when we were kids. They tell everybody the worst drug is the first drug. And I get that mentality, but to me, that's like telling kids don't have sex until you're married. Okay, it's just not going to work.
I don't think it's going to work.
No, it's not going to work. And the problem is you're essentially telling kids that weed is the same thing as heroin. So what you're doing is you're killing a whole generation.
That's what Joe Rogan says about it too.
Right, because again, you're going to give somebody marijuana and they're going to love it and they're going to say, whoa, this is great. And they said it's the same as heroin, I'm going to try that. You got, the truth is scary enough. You don't need to lie to kids.
I was told, even in the rooms, this, you can do whatever you want to, as long as you're willing to suffer the consequences.
Oh, that's...
And so, like, you want to smoke weed? Okay. You want to go do a pill? Okay. But this is what could happen.
Right.
And I don't believe in the anti-drug stuff out there. I feel like, I don't even know if I want to live in a world that was completely anti-drug. And some people I see are trying to eliminate it. I know a guy I'm going to have on the show soon who thinks that, and we're going to go to bat about that. But, like, I feel like people are always going to do something. It's never going to be gone.
It's never going to go away.
As long as there's a demand, there will be some sort of supply.
It's never going to go away. Look at what's going on with vaping. They're banning vaping and how it's blowing up in the black market. Like, it's never going to go away.
Yes.
You're never just going to say, hey, we're going to stop making drugs. It's never going to happen. So, again, saving lives and stopping the drug problem are two completely separate fights.
I think people should just forget about the anti-drug thing and just focus on the treatment stuff. Help the people that want to do what they can to get help.
Help the people that want
those
help.
people.
Absolutely.
And circle back to the Sesame Street thing, for those people who don't know, I think most people do, but they're having a character who has a mother who's struggling with addiction of some sort.
Absolutely.
What did you think about that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's one of those things that has for too long been out of sight, out of mind. Like, we're not going to talk about it, and I think it confuses kids. I grew up in an era where whatever happened in the house stayed in the house. You don't tell anybody. Well, let me tell you, I think that was one of the main reasons that I had the problems that I had when I was older, because I never learned how to share. I never learned how to talk about my problems. I learned how to bottle everything up. That got me nowhere. That made me a ticking time bomb. And I'm not saying my life would have been different, but I'm saying I don't think it helped, teaching me to keep everything inside. So I think to be able to turn on the show. And I grew up on Sesame Street. Sesame Street taught me how to count, I think it's great that they're doing this because, unfortunately, whether you want to talk about it or not, we have an entire generation of kids who have a parent or two parents who are addicted. Yeah. So it needs to be talked about. And those kids need comfort in that. Those kids need to realize, like, okay, I'm not alone. Okay, there's other people out there. Because there is comfort in that. And that I think helps.
Now, I agree with what you just said. I think we should be empowering kids, not hiding the truth from them, etc. Now, I've heard the pushback is, you just gotta let kids be kids. You're gonna traumatize the kids. But I say, as long as they're gonna talk about it in a loving, understanding way, which I assume they will, then I have no problems with it, and I don't think that's gonna traumatize anyone.
Well, I got news for you. I think it's more traumatizing for a kid to walk into a house and see their mom or dad laying on the floor from an OD rather than watching Sesame Street. So I have absolutely... I 100% do not agree with that.
So the parents that don't have that issue will say, well, that's not me. I'm not doing that. And so I don't want my kid to worry about it.
Well, then you know what? Their kid should learn because they're going to have a friend who's going to have that problem. They need to be there for support and understanding.
I agree with that part. So I'm on your side with this one because I've never been a fan of hiding things from people. Like one of the big things that went wrong in my own life was I felt too much like my parents were like the police officers, always trying to stop me from doing what I wanted to do. And the truth was a punishable offense. Yeah. And I'd be severely judged and criticized for what I did. And I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I learned how to lie. I learned how to be sneakier. I learned how to be more deceitful. And I'll tell you what, that's not a good thing. No. That's what goes down that's how you go down the addiction path.
Absolutely.
And that's how your relationship with a parent gets severed. But the ones that ironically do best are the parents that are a little more open with their kid. They kind of give them a large pen and let them have some freedom. And those are the ones that usually don't act out as much. So it's just like a wisdom, I think, that a lot of people are missing today, is they think, controlling and protecting is just going to stop their kids and prevent them from having any harm. But it's like, no, kids get strong from going through things.
Yes. You
gotta teach them how to be self-sufficient. You gotta let the life struggles come their way. Like Jordan Peterson says, it's like snakes coming into a garden. Like you can either try to shelter your kids from the snakes, or you can empower the kids to chop off the snakes' heads. And I know what method I would choose. But a lot of people, they're just trying to shelter the kids from all the harms.
We see that a lot. And I think that gets into the whole entitlement thing. And you got to let your kid fall. You got to. And I understand, like, again, as a father, and if my daughter's mother was here, she would tell you that I spoil my daughter more than I should. However, you got to let your kid fall and you got to let your kid get up,
It's tough. I get it. I don't have kids, so some people will negate my opinion because I don't have kids on this.
You're allowed to have an opinion.
Well, I've seen it happen. People try to dismiss it. Like that goes on. Unless you're this, you can't have an opinion on it. But yeah, empower them. Empower the kids to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
It seems, I get it, could seem like a good thing to do for kids, but it's really not.
We all want to protect our kid. We all want to protect our kid.
It's hard.
It is hard, but then I think about all the times that I fell as a kid. And then I think about, like when I get in a fight, and I ran in the house. I remember this. Like, I've seen this on TV shows. Like, my mom was like, get back outside. You got to learn how to handle situations.
Sure.
Look at Little League today. Little League, they don't even keep score because they don't want to offend anybody. They're not teaching anybody how to lose gracefully. It's like, let's just play and have fun. That's not life. That's not life.
Not preparing them for life.
No, we're not preparing them at all for life.
So before we get into the grab bag questions here, I wanted to talk also about, so you're dealing more with a lot of abuse and trauma now, right? That's what you're kind of angling some of your focus on?
A lot of my focus, mainly sexual trauma. I'm leaning more towards male sexual trauma, not negating, obviously, female sexual trauma. However, as a male, and as somebody who has experience in this, a lot of guys come to me and they're like, this happened to me as a child, and it's so prevalent in the field of substance abuse and addiction that I think it's something that definitely needs to be talked about and just be more open about. Look, we all have things in our life that we wish didn't happen. We all have things in our life that we wish we could undo. Those things also made us who we are today. And we can either decide to live in the pain and misery of what happened, or we can sit there and say, hey, this happened, it made me who I am today, I'm not going to let this control me anymore. I don't believe everything happens for a reason, but I do believe you can find a reason in everything.
I agree with that part too.
Yeah.
A lot of people do say that everything happens for a reason, very convenient.
That's a very convenient excuse out there.
It doesn't really take into account that I truly believe there is evil in the world.
Oh, there is.
And sometimes evil wins.
Mm-hmm.
And it wins temporarily. But we can, like we're going to talk about this in a second here, but we can look at these things differently and how we look at them and what we choose to learn from them, how we choose to respond to them says everything.
And again, that comes back to confidence within yourself. You got to believe you can overcome things in life.
It's like I always tell people, like, you say everything happens for a reason. It's like, yeah, well, tell that to your daughter just got raped or something.
Exactly.
Everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Or your daughter OD'd. Everything happens for a reason.
Right. No.
But it's like, no, I don't think it happens for a reason. But I've seen the parents of someone who has a kid that ODs. Mm-hmm. They become huge advocates and they try to help other people. So, like, they make the best of a terrible situation.
Yes. Or you can sit there and beat yourself up for something that you had no control over as a kid and let that control your entire life. So
exactly.
It all comes down to what's in here.
Yeah. So let's get to a few grab bag questions.
Oh boy.
So I would like to ask people a few different things.
Okay.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self if you can go back and speak to him today?
After I beat the ever-loving shit out of myself, or try to. I don't know if I could take myself at age 18, but I'd let them know about all the missed opportunities in life. I'd let them know that that even though you don't think, before you act at age 18, that there are, you got to be accountable, for decisions that you make. And I'm living proof of that today because I'm still trying to make right on mistakes that I made, 10 years ago.
Gotcha. So, what's a good book that you think you've read recently or that everyone should read at least once?
A Man's Search for Meaning is what I am reading right now. I read it probably 2 or 3 times by Viktor E. Franklin. It's definitely, I think you even said it's a must read. It really is. That's one that I really enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I know the lesson to that book to me was that he goes through the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, and he was able to think to himself, hey, the Nazis can take away all of my freedoms except for one, the freedom of how I'm going to choose to respond in any given situation. And he talks a lot about like the meaning that he adapted from that. And he wrote the book because of it. He made a terrible situation, and he somehow made a positive out of it.
And that's the thing. A terrible situation, not everything happens for a reason, but you can find a reason in everything that happens. And people will be like, well, that's not a recovery book. And my response to that is open your mind and read it and figure out a way to, use it to help your recovery. There's a lot of books out there. That's just my
And right now, we're living in a time where there's so many books to read and then free education on YouTube, on podcasts that we're either taking advantage of it or we're not.
Well, that's the thing, and people, and I say this all the time, like, take a college education for an example. We can literally read books that they read in college, but we don't, because why? Because there's no grade, because there's no, you're not in class. Like, there's so much knowledge out there right now, and we're not taking advantage of it.
Okay.
So
here's another question for you.
Okay.
If you could have a conversation with anyone, dead or alive right now, who are you having that conversation with, sitting on a park bench somewhere or something?
my mother, absolutely, hands down. Immediately followed by my grandmother, my grandfather, and my best friend, my sister, Nicole. My mom would be number one, though. I'd want my mom to know that she raised a better man than I turned out to be, and hopefully she's proud of me now. I know other family members aren't, but I hope my mom is.
Here's another good one I just came up with too. So, what is something that you want to become better at right now, or something new you're trying to do?
Well, right now we have a podcast, and we're really, my friend Mike and I, Mike Garcia, he's my business partner, my best friend. We have a podcast called All in Recovery with Mike and Joe. We have a Facebook page, you can find us. We're really trying to take that to the next level. My goal, honestly, is to get a radio show out of it. We have a very non-traditional approach. Mike and I play good cop, bad cop. We talk about some issues that a lot of people don't want to discuss. Like, we'll take the 12 steps, for example, and Mike will be like, okay, I'm pro, I'm con, and we discuss it. It doesn't necessarily have to be our belief, but we show it from different perspectives, and we try to do it in a way where there's no arguing, no fighting, and we come to an agreement and understanding at the end. So I'm really hoping that catches on and that we can go somewhere with that.
Okay. And so last question then.
Yes.
You could wave your magic wand in the whole treatment addiction field right now and change a couple things, or if it was all looking exactly how you would want it to look, what does that look like?
The first thing I would do, and this is really not going to be popular, I would limit treatment. I think that is a huge problem. I truly do. I think that if you go to treatment and you complete, then you should be allowed to come back in a few months. If you have a slip up, I hate the word relapse, I won't use it, but I think that if you AMA, if you leave against medical advice, I don't think you should be able to come back for a year. I think it's too much of a revolving door. I think people take advantage of it, and this is where I take heat for this, because yes, are people going to die? Absolutely, but there's going to be those people who are on the fence about leaving, and they're going to stay in treatment. They're going to stay in detox, they're going to stay in residential because they don't have anywhere to go, and they're going to think twice. And I just think, because eventually what's going to happen is insurance companies are going to stop paying. They're going to say, well, you've been to treatment 37 times in 2 years, so we're not paying. So then what's going to happen? So you got to limit it. You have to make people appreciate where they are. And I think a lot needs to be changed with Narcan. I think that is one of the biggest problems out there right now. Again, not popular, but let's talk about it.
So you don't like Narcan?
I'm a product of Narcan, first of all. But when you get hit with Narcan, okay, that is a second chance at life. I know people who have been hit 3 times in one day. I know people who have been hit over 30 times. There needs to be some accountability. Okay, meaning if you get hit with Narcan, then this needs to happen. If you get hit with Narcan once, then this happens. If you get hit with Narcan twice, then this happens. It's kind of essentially like DUI, except not like a punishment. You got hit with Narcan, it's a reward. Something needs to happen. Mike and I are actually working on a proposal. We don't know really what to do with it, but we're working on something for Congress or for somebody to take a look at. And people will argue this, and I don't care because I know it's true. They hand out this free Narcan. I know people who are like, yo, go get the Narcan, I'll go to Camden. And then, you hit me later. It happens. People don't want to admit it happens, but it does. And there's no accountability for it. And it needs to change. It really does.
Yeah, I'm not sure where my head's at on that one. I've not really given the Narcan thing too much thought. I just thought that, it's going to save some lives. And to the point where it's taken advantage of, I can see where It could be a problem. I mean, I think there should be consequences to things, but I'm not sure where I'd think about the Narcan.
I don't want to use the word consequence. Like I said, it's not a punishment if you get hit with Narcan. I just want people to realize that getting hit with Narcan is a second chance. And here's the thing, too, that people don't talk about. Narcan is not 100% guarantee. It's probably around under 50% if you get hit with Narcan, you're going to survive.
Yeah.
And there's drugs out there that Narcan doesn't touch today. So that's media's whole spin on the whole, oh, Narcan's going to save lives. Narcan will save your life. Like I said, I'm a product of it. But at the same time, there is no guarantee.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, do you have any other closing thoughts that you would like the audience to know?
Oh, God. Wow. I want everybody to check out my buddy Mike's book, okay? It's Have You Seen Your Mother by Mike Garcia. It's funny that a whole Sesame Street thing came out because he actually wrote a children's book about how to talk about a parent who suffers through addiction. So you can check that out at our website, not at our website, I'm sorry, at our Facebook page, All in Recovery with Mike and Joe.
Good stuff,
So,
man.
Yeah,
Definitely
absolutely.
thanks for coming on the show, brother.
No,
We appreciate
thank
it.
you. I appreciate it. This was great.
And so to whoever was still out there watching, thanks for watching. You're part of Joe's audience. Please comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about this video. Do you think we're a bunch of a couple of raving lunatics, or do you agree with us? Whatever it is, no judgment either way. But we'd love to hear what you think. So with that, over and out.
All right. Thanks, guys.